Hello chess friends, how would you like to learn how to provoke and exploit pawn weaknesses in your opponent's position? Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Grandmaster Max Illingworth, and in this short video, you're not just going to learn how to provoke weaknesses from your opponent and then exploit them, but you're even going to get a little sneak peek into a project I've been working on that I hope to share with you soon. So this position, as you might have seen if you read the top bar, was from a game between Evgeny Alexeyev as White's 2700 Russian GM at the time, against Viktor Lashnikar, a Czech Grandmaster, I believe the number 2 Grandmaster in Czech Republic at the time. So in this rapid game we have this position where, well, White has the bishop pair advantage, whereas Black only has one bishop. But the bishop's not doing all that much at the moment. Now, let me ask you this here. What would you say are the main weaknesses in White's position? Okay, you might like to pause the video if you need to think about it some more. But if not, then we will continue right on. So, at the moment it might not seem like there are any obvious weaknesses in White's position because all of his pawns are relatively defended. I guess you could say the c-pawn is sort of a pawn that's not so easy to move in that the bishops are in the way, and I mean White would love to have played c4 and have those two pawns side by side in the center, but that's not really a realistic goal at this point since, you know, the bishop is a little bit stuck. But actually I think the real weakness in White's position is actually the pawn on d4, and the reason for that is that, well, White can't just play c3 so easily to defend that pawn, as the bishop is sort of stuck defending these two pawns on d4 and b2. And okay, we have 3 attackers on the d-pawn to White's 2 defenders, but the 2 defenders are also in a sense less valuable than the attackers, meaning we would lose material if we played knight d4. But then that might give you an idea, well, what if we played to attack one of those defenders in some way? And you're on the right track. There are a few ways in which you could do this. In fact, the way we got to this position was earlier Black had played bishop to e4, hitting the knight and threatening to win the pawn by removing the defender. And then after knight e5 and bishop to g6, then White actually played the retreat knight f3. So actually the position had repeated once even when we got to this point in the game. But here Lashnikar realized that you can actually go for more than a draw in this position. Actually one of my students in my chess group suggested the move of knight e4 in this position, with the idea of trying to take this bishop. And I think it's not the worst idea, although maybe a move like knight d5 might be a somewhat refined version of the idea, since knight is more stable on d5 than on e4. The thing is though, when you take on c3, even though you double the White pawns, it might actually help White in some ways. Say if I play rook fe1 for argument's sake. Practically speaking, I'm not 100% sure about knight c3, because White does get the b file for his rook. It can maybe get some attacking chance against the king. Granted, Black's position objectively should still be quite good. Do you see a good way to attack the weakness on c3 from this position? Yeah, well done. You can play the move queen a3 and create some unpleasant pressure. Queen b2 also is not all that bad. We have similar ideas. So this is certainly possible as well. But I do like the move that Black played in the game, which was bishop to h5. And the idea of this is pretty straightforward. Simply to take the knight on f3 and to win the pawn on d4. Say if White were to play rook a to d1, then yeah, in the absolute worst case, you could take f3 and then take d4 and Well, to be fair, white probably has quite reasonable compensation with his bishop pair advantage. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that a move like queen e3 will be perhaps playable for white, since I think that knight c2 sees the knight kind of get trapped, from what I can tell. But it turns out that the way that white played in the game, he didn't want to give up a pawn in this way, and therefore he played the move g4, breaking the pin on the knight to the queen. But after bishop g6, a4, and then black's move a5 to ensure the queen doesn't get trapped, well, we can see that white's position has suddenly been weakened a bit, and that the king is a little bit exposed on g1 in the long term, and also white's pawn structure is somewhat inflexible in that, well, there are a few weak squares suddenly in the white position. In fact, here white maybe had to try some move like perhaps rook a3 and continue trying to play dynamically on the queen side, because we'll see in the game that it only takes one slightly careless or drifting move for white to suddenly end up in some trouble. What he did in the game was he played the move rook fe1, which, if this was a normal position, I think would be quite a healthy move. The problem is that long-term white has some serious weaknesses, and black found a very nice way to exploit some of the weak squares and pawns in white's position. Do you see the move that Lashnica played here with black to play? Yeah, congratulations. Again, there's more than one decent move. Perhaps you're ready to go knight d5 and exploit some of these weak dark squares in white's position. But I think that h5 first, as black played, might be even more precise. So after g5, keeping h-file closed, and knight d5, well, then we managed to weaken this white structure even more. And I think that white's next move was natural, but probably not the best. He played the move queen d2 to try and stop a knight f4 fork. But maybe something like knight h4, rook a3, something a little more aggressive, might have kept the disadvantage under a more manageable bounds. But now black realized, well, maybe the f4 square is covered, but there are some other weaknesses in white's position as well. Do you see the move that black played at this point? Yeah, well done. He played the move bishop to f5, attacking that undefended pawn on h3. If you want to fix the weakness with h4 or go after the c2 pawn with knight db4, those moves would also keep a very serious advantage for black. In the game after bishop f1, black did follow the Soviet principle of, fix the weakness in place so that we can attack it more easily. So h4, ensuring this pawn is not going anywhere. And also it kind of splits up the structure so that it's harder for white to safeguard his pawns. Even moves like f6 can potentially open up the white king even more. And in the game after rook to a to d3 and knight db4, it was just a very difficult position for white, where the c2 pawn is coming under attack as well. In the game after bishop b4, a b4, white realized his position was quite desperate with the attack on the rook and the pawn. And after white's move a5, we have a little tactical puzzle for you, where white is a strong player, so he's obviously trying to turn the game around in any way he can. But black found a nice trick here to ensure his very clear advantage. So what's the move that black played here? Yeah, congratulations. While a move like queen a7 would keep a pleasant advantage here, as it's sort of hard to defend both these pieces anyway, the move knight dx d4 is even more clinical, using the fact that we have just as strong a threat as white. After a takes b6, knight f3, rook d3, rook f3, and rook d2. Well, black was simply a pawn up here while having a very active rook. After bishop d3 and solid move of g6, well, I won't go through every move of the game, because we've basically seen our primary theme of attacking the white weaknesses, and we saw how by continually attacking and provoking the white weak pawns to move forward and create further pawn and square weaknesses, that translate into a full extra pawn for black here, that he did ultimately convert into victory in another 30 moves. So okay, what was the main lesson that you learned from this video? Let me know in the comments, and also make sure to show your appreciation for this video with a like and perhaps even a subscribe, so that I know to give you more awesome content like this, and maybe even some better stuff as time goes on. You know, this is all for you and your chess improvement and your chess journey. So I'll see you then in the next video, chess friends.